Good afternoon, everyone. We're just going to give it like another minute or so for more people to log in, and then we'll get started with the presentation. Okay, well, we'll go ahead and jump in, and people can still log in and join as we're going throughout the presentation. But I'd like to say good afternoon and welcome to the Regulatory Authority's presentation on small and medium-sized business protection. Who is the RA? The Regulatory Authority of Bermuda is an independent, apolitical regulatory body which regulates local service providers in the electricity, electronic communications, and submarine cable sectors. The RA was established in 2011 and is held accountable by several acts of legislation. We promote fair business practices, protect consumer and industry stakeholders. We encourage innovation, competition, and integrity in regulated markets. And the regulated sectors that we are involved with include electricity, electronic communications, and submarine cables. My name is Tracy Burgess, and I am the consumer advocate with the RA. Also joining us on today's call is Tricia Smith, who's one of the RA's legal advisors, and she is the author of the RA's Principles of Consumer Protection, General Determination, which includes coverage for individuals as well as small and medium-sized businesses. Tricia is going to be fielding questions and answering questions in the chat on today's webinar presentation. And anything that we cannot get to or is not able to be answered in the chat today, please feel free to email me at tburgess@ra.bm or give us a call on 474-6020, and we'll be happy to find the information that you're seeking and get right back to you as soon as possible. As the consumer advocate, I have responsibility for providing consumer guidance to individuals and businesses. I also manage all consumer and business complaints and disputes that are escalated to the RA. You've got my contact details on the screen, and you can also reach us through our website, www.ra.bm. Why business protection? Why is it important? The RA's mandate to protect consumers, including small and medium-sized businesses, which will collectively be referred to as businesses throughout this presentation, involves education. We believe that an informed business is an empowered business. The Principles of Consumer Protection is General Determination is a set of legally enforceable rules that the RA has created to protect the interest of consumers and businesses, to promote the delivery of high quality services and products, and to encourage best practices by the regulated service providers. It's important to note that any breaches of these rules could result in consequences and/or enforcement action being taken against the offending service provider. Small and medium-sized business protection and what it means for you. Every business in Bermuda has rights and responsibilities. If your business owns a cell phone, uses internet services, or pays for electricity, then the RA's guidelines for business protection apply to you. Business rights and responsibilities. As a business, you have the responsibility to address your concerns, complaints, and technical issues with your service provider in a timely manner. The RA should not be your first point of contact to lodge a complaint, but rather you need to communicate directly with your service provider. Businesses should also allow a reasonable amount of time to work towards a resolution with the service provider, typically allowing about 60 days for that process to unfold. Business rights include the right to access your service provider's complaints handling policy and to have your complaints acknowledged by your service provider within 1 business day. Additional responsibilities of a business are to understand the terms and conditions of a contract before signing, because once you sign, it's a legally binding contract. You're bound to what you've signed on for. Business rights include the right to be able to cancel a contract within the first 2 weeks of service. So within the first 14 days, the business has the right to end a contract without penalty. It's referred to as a cooling off period. Businesses can also opt out during the term of a contract if the service provider is in breach of any section of that contract. However, it should be noted that the business may be liable for the cost of any equipment that may have been purchased under the contract and may be liable for the cost of prorated services that have been used up until that point. Business responsibilities also include knowing your ability to pay your bill and understanding all financial obligations of receiving a product or service before you sign a contract. Additional rights for businesses: you have the right to receive honest advertising and for the service provider to use clear language that is easy to understand and is not misleading. For contracts that are more than 2 pages long, the service provider must also provide the business with a 1-page contract summary sheet. Similar to businesses, service providers have rights and responsibilities too. Some of the service provider responsibilities include complying with the obligations and guidelines of their license, which is issued by the regulatory authority to deliver products and services in the local marketplace. Any breaches of the license could result in consequences for the service provider and/or enforcement action being taken against them. Service provider rights include the right to enforce their terms of service and conditions of a signed contract unless it is otherwise stated. This is why it's so important for businesses to fully understand the terms and conditions of a contract before signing. Service providers also have the right to make changes to a term contract by giving reasonable notice to the business and, where such changes are strictly necessary, to either comply with the law, regulations, or standards in relation to health and safety or tariffs. When contract changes do occur, the business is entitled to either continue with service under the new terms and conditions, or the business is entitled to end the contract without any penalty for early termination. It's also important to note that the RA mandates a maximum permitted term contract length of 12 months for all electronic communication services. Additional responsibilities of the service providers include providing fair treatment and access for vulnerable persons, including having a priority services register in place. This is not limited to physical access to the buildings, but it also includes access to services and customer care for persons of various abilities. Service provider rights also include the right to inform affected businesses of planned outages that last for more than 5 minutes, and they have the responsibility to provide businesses with their best estimated time frame for restoration of services for both planned and unplanned outages. Service providers have the responsibility to provide clear billing information on all bills that they generate. Billing must be clear, and service providers shall ensure that businesses have access to adequate billing information upon request and without charging a fee for information dating back for the previous 12 months. Service providers must also refrain from sending unsolicited direct marketing without consent from the business, or in other words, spamming is prohibited. Service provider rights include the right to receive payment for services provided to the business on or before the published due date, which is why, again, it is important to understand the service provider's terms and conditions and understand all financial obligations before signing a contract. We spoke earlier about the RA not being the first stop or the first point of contact for lodging a complaint. So I wanted to just briefly go through the complaints process and what that looks like. So it's important to note that the RA only receives escalated complaints from businesses. A business must first take all reasonable steps to resolve the matter directly with your service provider, typically allowing up to 60 days to reach a resolution. It is the business's responsibility to address your complaint with your service provider in a timely manner. And note that each service provider is required to have their own policy for handling complaints. If the matter is not being handled to your satisfaction, then it is your responsibility to escalate the complaint to a manager within the service provider. If a complaint cannot be resolved in a timely manner between you and your service provider, typically within 60 days, then you may escalate that complaint to the RA. The first step in raising your complaint with the RA is to complete our Submit a Complaint form on www.ra.bm. The complaint form must include all supporting documents and previous correspondence between you and your service provider regarding this matter. Once the complaint is received, the RA will have 30 days to either resolve the complaint or take any other steps that may be necessary, such as refer the matter to private arbitration, adjudication, or in some instances, formally dismiss the complaint where it is found to be plainly without merit. And that's a summary of the complaint process. Additional information is found on our website at www.ra.bm. And again, my contact details are listed, tburgess@ra.bm, or telephone 474-6020. And with that, we can open the floor for questions. I'm not seeing any questions coming up in the chat box. No, Tristy, neither you? Okay.
Nope, I don't see any just yet.
All right, well, with that, we're going to wrap it up. If there's no questions coming in, again, please feel free, if anything pops to mind and you do have a question, feel free to email us. My email again is tburgess@ra.bm, or you can contact us through the website, ra.bm, or telephone 474-6020. Thank you for joining us this afternoon.
Thank you. Bye.